Everyone knows YouTube. YouTube is probably the biggest video website out there. Everyone is on YouTube. It seems as if it has really no real competition out there. You have people who spend most of their days watching YouTube and people who have made entire careers out of being on YouTube. That wasn't always the case. The first YouTube video came up 2005, and it was literally called Me at the Zoo. In 2005, I was 15 years old, and like many videos back then, no one really knew what they were doing on YouTube. It was not the polished, curated thing that it is today. If you go on YouTube's homepage now without any sort of login, you see all these blue check, well, not blue check marks, it's not Twitter, but all these official websites. You have big companies posting things on YouTube, and that just wasn't the thing back in the day. And I think that that is kind of hard for a lot of people to maybe contend with, those who have been on YouTube for a really long time. We have a few people who have maintained careers on YouTube since the creation of YouTube. And I think that has been in large because they have to change the course of their content. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Why am I even making this video? I'm making this video because I'm sure, like many other people, 9 days ago, I watched the documentary posted by the documentary filmmaker Mike Clum, The Dark, Sad Life of Boogie2988. Now, full disclosure here, even though I was 15 when YouTube came out, and a lot of people in my high school and all that good stuff used to absolutely love watching YouTube. I mean, I loved watching the unpolished, crazy videos that no one really knew what to do, just randomness. I mean, even friends of mine would just post random things that we did at school on YouTube, and it was fun. I mean, in many ways, I very much miss that old YouTube just because it was less of, I'm not going to think about what's going to go viral and what's going to make the front page or something. It was just, here's some fun memories, and that way then I can kind of be creative, be silly on it, and then maybe show my friends. And that is not how YouTube is anymore. And I can imagine that if you had started your career on YouTube, garnered a lot of attention on YouTube, that felt maybe odd that YouTube started shifting away from that. Jenna Marbles started her career on YouTube all those years ago. I used to watch this one person, if anyone else has watched her, Glow Pink Star, who literally was invited on the George Lopez show back in the day. And if you watched her old content, a lot of it was just silly and none of it was polished, and it was all done on not so great cameras with really grainy quality. And that's what we loved about YouTube. And that was essentially during the time that someone like Boogie2988 posted. And that was about 17 years ago. And his first video was 49 seconds long, called Playing Dungeons and Dragons. And it is crazy to think about someone who has been on YouTube for this long. And I think, as I mentioned before, I never really watched his content. I became aware of who this person was just a few years ago, because this person, while having over 4 million subscribers, has kind of been in a decline for years. There's lots of documentaries on YouTube about the fall of Boogie2988, and that's where I became aware of who this person even was. His content really wasn't any content that I was interested in, but I love documentaries, and I love kind of learning about YouTubers from old and those who have successfully been able to make the transition into modern day YouTube, and those who unfortunately have fallen to the wayside. And it seems someone like Boogie2988, that is his story, falling to the wayside. And this video is kind of me just talking about the documentary by Mike Clum, and then also pondering if there is any sort of longevity on YouTube. Mike Clum is a documentary filmmaker, and actually this video is the first video on his new YouTube channel, which is pretty cool. And the documentary is very well made. I've seen Moist Critical review it. I've seen a few others. Ethan Klein of H3H3 reviewed it. And I think it was Ethan Klein who said, because the documentary is only about an hour long, and even Ethan Klein said, I wish it was longer. And I felt very much the same way, just because it is insane in the way that this person still has all the subscribers that he has and cannot break a fair amount of views. Now, as someone who has very little subscribers to her personal channel, and then even the channel that I do, Geek Vibes Nation, which has over 7,000 followers, the views, having like 10,000 views on a video feels really good. But if you're someone who's been on YouTube for 17 years, has over 4 million subscribers, getting something like 10 million views has to suck. And in the documentary, Boogie2988 even describes that he's not making money and all that, yada yada yada. There's a lot that goes into this person's backstory that I am just not well versed enough to talk about. And if you know YouTube history, if you've watched documentaries and videos on the rise and fall of Boogie2988, you are definitely well more educated than I am. But it was just very interesting watching the documentary, talking to this person, and seeing essentially how a combination from what I'm seeing. Again, this is just me being like a backseat driver, essentially, right? It was a combination of controversies, which, I mean, yes, controversies definitely can tank your views. But if you have someone like, I'm just going to use someone who's very controversial on YouTube, someone like Trisha Paytas, who is constantly getting into controversies and who's been on the website, I think, for about 15 years or something like that. She still does a decent amount of views, definitely more than someone like Boogie2988. So yes, controversies can certainly tank your YouTube channel, but there has to be more than just that. And the combination of tanking your YouTube channel by having controversies, as well as not being financially savvy, that was a huge point that was made in the documentary. I feel that the documentary, while it touched upon some of the controversies, some of the unpleasant things that Boogie2988 did, a lot of it focused around his finances. And it then becomes someone who is kind of living beyond their means, and then also not having the greatest attitude about it. If you watch Mike Clum's documentary, that was very evident that this is a person who obviously felt very good having the type of stardom that he did. And I mean, I don't blame him. At the age of 33, my friends and I sometimes joke and go, man, imagine if we had started creating content back during the beginnings of YouTube, where you didn't need to be polished, you didn't have to have a curated thumbnail or a clickbaity title, you could just do silly things and get recognition. Where would we be today? Maybe we would be big, or maybe it would be a blip in time where we weren't able to maintain that sort of momentum. But someone like Boogie2988 is certainly living outside of his means. But the documentary is very good. The documentary is very well done. And I think that if you just like watching stuff about YouTubers who've kind of fallen from grace, then you're going to absolutely love this documentary. I mean, it is not a very flattering view of Boogie2988. And it's, at one point, I wanted to talk about this because in the middle of the documentary, Mike Clum himself, the documentary person, makes a comment that this is very depressing. Boogie2988, everything he says is very depressing, and it just feels doom and gloom, no positivity at all. I felt that everything that Boogie2988 was saying did not feel as if he had any sort of hope or that there was any sort of idea to make better content. I mean, if you go to this man's YouTube page and you look at his latest things, first of all, and let me also kind of go on a thing. He is very worried about money, and everything that he's doing is to get money. I feel that, right? That is something that for a normal person who never made a shit ton of money off of YouTube, you can feel that. Definitely there are there are many people in this country all around the world who are living paycheck to paycheck. So you feel that, but virtually almost every single one of Boogie's recent videos, except for a few, are clips essentially from the documentary. You can tell that he made this documentary not to really show the audience that maybe he's changed or that, you know, people should still view him even though X, Y, and Z. You can tell he did this documentary because he wants to monetize it. And I don't know if that's necessarily doing the greatest. His latest video again is a clip from the documentary where him and his girlfriend go to a comedy club and they get pretty destroyed. That's only 10,000 views. His GTA 6 reveal one did do 56,000, which again, for a small YouTuber, that would feel really good to make $56,000. But if you're someone with over 4 million subscribers, that has to hurt. Some of them are doing well. Some of them are breaking over 100,000, wow, 100,000, over 100,000 views. But as someone again who has never watched this man's content, I was scrolling, and he really has not been doing well for the last like 3 years or so. And obviously at some point, if you go back to his earlier years, maybe even his first decade, he's hitting views like 1 million or something like that. But it has been in the past 4 years that he has been making under 100,000 views per video. And if you know anything about the monetization of YouTube, you get very little for how many views. I mean, I always thought years ago that, oh, people who are doing even a few hundred views have to be doing well. You're really not making anything. So if for the last few years, someone like Boogie2988 has been doing less than even 50,000 views, he's not raking in a lot. And far be it from me to even judge someone or even make financial suggestions or something, but it feels like you should have known early on that you were in a decline and maybe been smarter about your finances. And if you watch the documentary, you see what he spent a lot of money on and his trying to justify spending a lot of money on, even though he has been probably in a financial decline for the past like 5 years. And I am happy that Mike Clum did his documentary in a very honest way where it's like the excuses that Boogie2988 was coming with, Mike Clum was just not having it, not glamorizing it essentially. So that's one thing. Please go watch the documentary. But it just made me think about like the longevity of YouTubers. Is that even possible? We have people like Jenna Marbles, who was doing very well on YouTube prior to her deciding to walk away for reasons that she explains in her last video that came out like 3 years ago or something. But I mean, you have a lot of YouTubers that had to shift their content, especially after, I think they call it the ad apocalypse or something of 2016, where YouTube kind of shifted its ad revenue and went into a more family friendly like content. Which is funny, again, this coming from someone who really wasn't involved in YouTube for a really long time, because I do remember seeing some pretty wild things on YouTube. And then in the last few years, hearing people essentially have to like infantize their speech in order to not be demonetized by YouTube or just straight up banned from YouTube has been really interesting, because if you're in your 30s and you're a millennial, you remember what YouTube used to be like. But again, time changes, everything has to change, and everyone has to shift how they do things in order to stay with the times. It is how technology works, it is how the work environment works. If you do not adapt, you do not survive. And it's just been very interesting to see a lot of these old YouTubers kind of falling from grace, or not falling from grace, but some falling from grace, but then some just not knowing really what to do with their content. There was this one YouTuber that I really enjoyed watching, and her name was Graveyard Girl. And if you were during like the 2016 beauty community type of viewership, you remember Bunny. I mean, she's still on YouTube and she still has 8 million subscribers, but she posted something a day ago that only got 11,000 views. And I think even she said at some point a few years ago that she just doesn't know what to do with her content anymore. It has to be hard to, longevity wise, think of different things to come out with, and people's attention spans are people's attention spans are so short. You have to really be able to crank out different things in order to maintain your audience. And I think that's why probably a lot of YouTubers you see, yes, they make their money, they make their notoriety, but then they're on other social media platforms, or they have their individual business endeavors, because it does seem that YouTube is not a completely viable lifestyle. It's not something that you completely put all of your eggs, like you can't put all the eggs in the basket when it comes to YouTube. And I am learning that more and more as I've discovering YouTube, and then also seeing other people's YouTube careers, that you just cannot solely rely on YouTube. And I think that's something that people did not realize, that when they were at their height and probably making a shit ton of money, they thought, I can do this for the rest of my life. And then now you have kids who, when you ask them what their aspirations are, some people want to be YouTubers. And I do not think that they realize that that's not a viable long-term career. But yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to come on and share my thoughts a little with this, because after watching that documentary and watching a few other YouTube videos, I just kind of sat there and thought, I don't know if something like YouTube is a long-term sort of goal that people should have, because one way or another, your views are going to drop off. And if you're not smart with your money, or you don't have other business ventures, then you may not survive. So, I don't know. Those were my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Were you a fan of Boogie2988 before all of the controversy? Do you still watch his stuff? Did you see the Mike Clum documentary? And what are your thoughts on the longevity of YouTube? And is it a viable career path for people to have? Yeah, if you want, please like and subscribe and all that good stuff. I have no idea what I'm doing actually with my personal channel, but if you like this video, please let me know, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.